The decade that began with a deadly clash in the streets of Boston would end with a new nation fighting for its very existence, and for the idea that free people could govern themselves. Hello friends, I'm Jim Rand, your AI host for History in Decades. Today we step into the decade of 1770 to 1780, the years when colonial frustration became open war and a bold experiment in liberty was launched. The decade opened with the Boston Massacre of March 5, 1770. British soldiers, already deeply resented for their presence in the city, fired into a crowd of colonists, killing 5 men. The event was quickly seized upon by colonial leaders as proof of tyranny. Tensions cooled for a time after most of the Townshend duties were repealed, but the underlying grievances remained. In 1773, Parliament passed the Tea Act, designed to help the struggling East India Company while still asserting the right to tax the colonies. On the night of December 16th, colonists of men, many dressed as Mohawk Indians, boarded 3 ships in Boston Harbor and dumped 342 chests of tea into the water. The Boston Tea Party was a dramatic act of defiance. Britain responded with the Coercive Acts, known in America as the Intolerable Acts, closing the port of Boston, restricting local government, and forcing colonists to quarter British troops. These measures united the colonies more than any previous policy. In September 1774, delegates from 12 colonies met in the First Continental Congress in Philadelphia. They petitioned the king, organized a boycott of British goods, and began coordinating resistance. The following spring, British General Thomas Gage ordered troops to seize colonial military supplies in Concord, Massachusetts. On the night of April 18, 1775, Paul Revere and others rode to sound the alarm. At dawn on April 19th, the shot heard round the world rang out on Lexington Green. Fighting continued at Concord and along the road back to Boston. The war had begun.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying these deep dives into ancient history, I think you'll love our companion series. The Odyssey, short and engaging retellings, a full vivid retelling of Homer's epic, one book at a time. Join us for dramatic storytelling, legendary adventures, and the ultimate tale of homecoming. The link is right there in the show notes. The Odyssey, short and engaging retellings. Go check it out.
Militia poured into the area around Boston. In June, the Battle of Bunker Hill, fought mostly on Breed's Hill, showed that colonial farmers and tradesmen could stand up to British regulars, even if they ultimately withdrew. The Second Continental Congress appointed George Washington commander of the Continental Army. In March 1776, the British evacuated Boston. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, largely drafted by Thomas Jefferson. It proclaimed that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Governments, it declared, derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. This was not merely a list of complaints. It was a statement of principle, rooted in the belief that free people have the right and the duty to govern themselves. The war that followed was hard and uncertain. Washington's army suffered defeats around New York in 1776, but achieved a critical victory at Trenton on Christmas night. The turning point came in 1777 at Saratoga, where American forces under Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold forced the surrender of a British army. That victory convinced France to enter the war as an American ally in 1778, a decisive shift in the balance of power. The winter of 1777 to 78 at Valley Forge tested the Continental Army to its limits. Soldiers lacked food, clothing, and shelter. Disease spread. Yet under Washington's leadership and with the help of Baron von Steuben's training, the army emerged stronger and more professional. Ordinary men, farmers, shopkeepers, and laborers endured extreme hardship for the cause of independence. Many found strength in faith and in the bonds of shared purpose. Churches and local communities continued to support the war effort with supplies, prayer, and encouragement. By 1780, the war had shifted south. The British captured Charleston in May, dealing the Americans one of their worst defeats. Benedict Arnold's treason that same year was a bitter blow, yet the fight continued. Ordinary people kept the cause alive through local militias, committees of safety, and quiet determination. Throughout the decade, the emotional and moral stakes were high. Colonists who had once been proud British subjects now saw their former government as a threat to their rights and way of life. Britain, for its part, viewed the rebellion as an ungrateful challenge to lawful authority. The conflict forced Americans to decide what kind of people they would be, subjects of a distant king or citizens of a free republic. Notable figures of the decade. George Washington rose from colonial officer to commander of the Continental Army. His steady leadership, personal integrity, and refusal to grasp power held the cause together through its darkest hours. Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence, giving the Revolution its enduring moral and political language. John Adams was a tireless advocate for independence in Congress, and later helped secure foreign support. Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry stirred the people with their bold calls for resistance and liberty. We also saw the courage of ordinary soldiers and civilians whose names are less known, but whose sacrifices made independence possible. Closing reflection. The 1770s showed that free people will not submit indefinitely to distant rule that denies their rights. Ordinary men and women, guided by faith, principle, and a fierce attachment to self-government, chose the hard path of resistance. They understood that liberty is never safe without vigilance, and that self-reliance is the foundation of a free society. Stability isn't given to us. It must be guarded by vigilant, self-reliant people who are committed to passing it on to the next generation. If you're finding value in these episodes, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. It really helps the podcast grow. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who would appreciate learning from the past. That's how we build something meaningful together. I'm Jim Rand. Thanks for listening to History in Decades. Until next time, stay rooted in the lessons history provides.